Hello, Namaskar, and welcome to my pod, the CAA Show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis. My name is Jagi Basi. To become a subscriber, all you have to do is to press that red button on your screen. You become a subscriber of the CAA Show. Subscription is completely free. Would also really appreciate if you could like this video and share this video with your friends. Now, there is total chaos in the world today, as we all know, ever since the President of the United States has unleashed his tariff regime over the world. The ostensible reason which he says is that because countries have been bleeding in unfair trade practices, and that is why this tariff regime has been unleashed on the world. This is the ostensible reason. But I'm going to argue in this podcast that is not the real reason. There are entirely different reasons why this tariff regime has come into play. And we all know what this tariff regime in these 2 or 3 days has done. There has been a loss of almost $10 trillion all across the globe. In the US alone, I think there has been a loss of almost $6 to $7 trillion. Yesterday was Black Monday, even in the Indian stock markets. The Indian stock markets are not bleeding so much as compared to other Asian markets, but still there has been, people have lost a lot of money. Today the markets have rebounded a little bit, but this yo-yo situation, this back and forth will continue. This sense of uncertainty, this absolutely state of ambiguity, of fear, all this is bound to continue for quite some time. But I have spotted something very interesting. I've noticed something very interesting which is going on right now, which actually coincides with the India story. And I want to give you my particular angle on why the president of the US has done this. This moment when the president of the US has unleashed his tariff regime is, to my mind, a very similar moment in a certain sense when in 2016, the prime minister of our country had ushered in demonetization. It is that same kind of fear of uncertainty, so-called chaos, etc., where the entire media turned, as they have turned against the president in the US, and the world media is actually right now against the president. And similarly, the Indian media was also almost completely against the prime minister. And yet, something very remarkable happened in 2016 when the prime minister of this country actually emerged stronger from demonetization. He actually became more popular from demonetization. And I'm taking a very, very wild bet. I'm pretty sure about this, that the president of the US, like our prime minister in 2016, has actually gained more popularity among his MAGA constituency, that is a Make America Great Again constituency, by these actions. I'm pretty sure about that. Yes, he might have become very unpopular with various other segments in the US, and certainly his unpopularity in the world. There's no question about it. People would not be very happy at what's going on. But this is that very interesting. It's a very strangely this kind of symmetry which I find between the two leaders in both instances, that is in 2016 what happened and what's happening today in 2025. And the simple reason for that, let's understand the reason for that, is that the people at the bottom of the pile, the people, the toiling people, the people who are hardworking people, they, in one sense, are very, very happy that people who are invested in the stock markets, people who have much, much more money than them, are losing money. It's as simple as this. People are probably, they are cheering from their home, they're cheering from the sidelines that, yeah, some of these rich folks had it coming. And that is probably something which is going on in the US, something which happened in India also in 2016. Because remember, the popularity of the prime minister skyrocketed after demonetization. So that is something we need to remember. So I'm arguing here that the primary reason for the president of the US to unleash the tariff regime is MAGA. It is addressing his constituency. He, in a sense, wants to bring back the 50s and 60s of America back in 2025. And if you remember, during that time in the 50s and the 60s, for those of you who don't know, for the younger lot, There used to be these great American car cities, these great steel industries, entire townships where the entire townships were employed in steel industries. All the men used to work in steel plants, and there used to be these entire townships were built around manufacturing. He probably wants to bring in that era. A lot of people are arguing that era has gone away. It can never ever come back. Today, the world, today, commodities, today, goods, today, manufacturing is divided in so many different parts that it is not possible that, for instance, in one township, you can have people, from the lowest levels right up to high skilled labor, everything in one, for instance, in American city. That's a pipe dream. A lot of people argue. Let's wait and see. I'm saying the jury is out there. 90% of the people feel that this tariff regime is bound to fail. It's going to come a cropper. I'm saying let's hold our horses. Let's see where it heads. What kind of a new order it unleashes? Because one thing is very, very clear, that definitely a new order is coming. The old order cannot do. But in short, let's conclude on one particular point, that the primary reason is not so much as to teach other nations a lesson that they have been mistreating America or taking America for granted, but rather it is to address the MAGA constituency, assure them that the president of the US, is watching their backs. He wants the old industries to come back, the car industry, the automobile industry, the steel mills, and it's not only AI or services which America should be known for, should be known basically for manufacturing. And that's the primary reason. And the second big reason, I think, also is to teach China a lesson. Because now something very interesting has happened. China is actually very, very advanced in certain ways. Just to give an example, which will help us to understand what's going on, the Chinese Navy, for instance, is probably 3 or 4 times more bigger. I'm not too sure if it's more powerful, but it is certainly more bigger than the American Navy. And it will be very, very difficult. It's very difficult already for the Americans to catch up with the number of destroyers, warships, aircraft carriers, which the Chinese have. And so how does the US, how does America catch up with China? It does that by breaking the back of China in business matters, in terms of economy, in terms of trade. And primarily, I think all this tariff regime is really aimed at China. And in the process, if the president of the United States, if he can leverage better trade deals with countries like, for instance, India, other countries across the globe, then all the more better. And a third reason, I think, also could be that certainly the president of the US has a certain animus. He is very cut up with Europe by and large, because even today, Europe, the main power centers in Europe are left liberal regimes. And why is he cut up? He's cut up for the very simple reason that most of these regimes actually actively campaigned against him. They did not want him to be elected as president. That's the first part. Let's not forget. And I think the second reason, which I'm surprised why nobody's talking about, is that the president of the US certainly would want the right wing in these European countries to occupy center stage so that he can directly deal with them. He's not happy with these left liberal regimes. And this very idea that these are far out extremists, right, as the media loves, in the European media loves to call these parties. And he's also not very happy with the fact that in terms of legal fare, or this new term which is being used, that courts and judges are now banning political entities. As we all know, that Marie Le Pen has been banned from standing in elections by a French court. 3 judges have banned her from standing in election. So I don't think that the president of the United States is very particularly happy about these developments. He would like to deal with Europe, but a Europe which is on a synergetic level with his own, not these left liberal regimes. And that's the third big reasons. He also understands that a large part of the dumping from China takes place via the route of countries like Vietnam, and that's why this complete these exceedingly high tariffs on countries like Vietnam. So there are a number of reasons, but to kind of sum it up, the American point of view, then the two single biggest reasons are, of course, the MAGA constituency, and as I said, maybe they are definitely cheering for him. That's my own guess estimate. And number two is China to break the economic stranglehold of China in manufacturing. That is primarily the reason. Now, let's talk of the India angle. Where does India come into all this? We have been slapped with almost a 24 or 26% tariff. This thing. The good news, of course, is, and why our markets have recovered today is because at the end of the day, we are not an export economy like China. We are still an economy which is building its muscle in terms of domestic manufacturing. We are looking inwards. We still have a long way to go where we are completely self-sufficient. But the very fact that our focus is more inwards is helping in a situation like this, so we can absorb some of the pain. And the pain has been there, as I said, Black Monday yesterday, where there are some investors who have almost lost up to 10 to 20% of their savings because of the wipeout at the stock markets. Now, what does India do in a situation like this? What should be India's gain in a situation like this? I think, first of all, let's talk a little bit of the stock markets and all that. The obvious thing, which all experts are saying, which is correct also, is that forget about day to day, short selling and trading and all that. Hang in there. Keep your stocks there for a 1 year to a 3 to 5 year period, and then the markets are bound to come back at some point or the other. But then governments need not be too bothered with the stock markets to a certain extent. You have to keep an eye on that, but they are not the lifeblood of the country, which the American president also in his own way is saying. What really matters is that our exports are going to be affected and how it's going to impact on the economy. And some people are estimating that even at a worst case scenario, we might just end up by losing 10 to $15 billion. We can absorb that shock. But I would actually say that right now the government's cautious approach, it hasn't made any what I would call florid announcements or very, aggressive announcements. It's a wait and watch situation, which is probably the best approach. It's trying to negotiate a trade deal with the United States. Personally, I'm not too very hopeful because there are some drawbacks. There are some obstacles on the way. But if a trade deal comes, that would obviously the best thing in our interest. But the fact is, but the fact of the matter is that in a time like this, it becomes extremely important to ask ourselves the fundamental question that are we going to allow ourselves to be bracketed like countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Israel, South Korea, all the other countries and all that? Or does India have a unique USP where it stands aloof, it stands alone, and we don't make too many compromises, but we negotiate from, I'm not going to use the term from a position of strength, but certainly not from a position of weakness, where we know our abilities, we know our strength, and therefore we would negotiate or renegotiate with the US on terms on almost like an equal footing. Is that possible also? I'm arguing, yes, that is possible. And why is that possible? That is possible because if we again have to tell ourselves our biggest USP, and what is that? And that USP simply is our population dividend. We are a nation of 1.4 billion, the most interesting and the lucrative market in the world. Let's not forget it. We are not Vietnam. We are not Israel. We are not South Korea. We are not the UK. We are none of these countries. We are a nation of 1.4 billion, and invariably every country will have to come to us. Even the US cannot ignore India. So that's the first USP you need to remember. And number two, remember your other important strengths. You have a large pool of English-speaking people in India, which is a great, great asset. And number three, there is a sizable portion of skilled workforce in India. Starting from all kinds of levels, right down from the hospital staff, the people, the nurses, it goes up to the doctors, the techies, the scientists. There's an entire pool, an entire variation of skilled people, trained people, professionals in this country. This is our biggest strength. And let's not forget another important strength of India in today's, if we compare it with today's day and world, with what's going on, we are a politically stable country. Never mind the fact that the European media, even the American media, has been, taking pot shots at our democratic credentials. Let them do that. It doesn't matter. But we are very politically, democratically stable country, which is a very, very big asset, especially in the subcontinent. This is a huge asset which we have. Then, when we start our negotiations with the US, remember that there is a certain commonality with the US. At least on the social agenda, we are absolutely similar with the US. The United States today, the present dispensation, they hate wokeism, they hate all this transgenderism, they hate that there are people who are moving away from God, religion. We also believe we also have the same value systems in India. So, on the social agenda, there is complete synchronicity. There is a complete, a meeting of minds, as it were. So that's a very, very big. So that's a great start to a meeting of what lies ahead for the two countries. Now, uh, I am arguing here that when we negotiate with the US trade deal, then these are the assets which have to be kept forward. By all means, whether we reduce tariffs on certain goods and on certain services, we allow more imports. Those are matter of detail, those are matter of technical details, they can all be sorted out. But the intention is that unlike China, for instance, because China, whether we like it or not, does have a hegemonistic ambitions. It definitely wants to be the one power in the world. It is certainly the number two power. Give it to China, but it wants to be the number one, both in military terms and also in terms of civil and infrastructure and in trade and commerce. We don't have such ambition. We are very happy that we become Viksit Bharat by 2047. That's the dream. That is the aspiration of this country. And therefore, we are focusing on our internal strengths. We are developing relations and being friendly with countries across the globe. So that has to be kept in mind when we negotiate with the US. So that's a good starting point. That's an opportunity because we have to keep hammering home this point. A nation of 1.4 billion people, the most interesting and lucrative market in the world, English speaking, trained workforce, skilled workforce. These are huge assets, politically stable. Also, at the same time, in the measure of things that we work with the US, but at the same time, what we are doing, and we are doing that right now also, is to strengthen regional groupings. Like, for instance, when the Prime Minister was in Thailand some time back, this regional grouping of what is known as BIMSTEC. These kind of groupings like ASEAN, then our rapport with individual countries like Japan, which is heavily invested in infrastructure. A lot of people don't know. Maybe Japan is heavily invested now in the chips revolution, which is taking place in India. They put a lot of money in these endeavors, in these enterprises. Countries like Russia, where we have an ongoing relationship of trust, faith, military relationship, that of course has to continue. New frontiers in Africa, Latin America, and certainly the Middle East. I was in Dubai recently, a few weeks back, and it was stunning to see that India, it's like, the joke really is that Dubai is like an Indian state, a much more well-developed, more cleaner Indian state. But it's that kind of synergy which is there. And that kind of synergy is there in the Middle East. So we keep on strengthening these regional groupings. We keep on developing our relations with countries. And there is no reason why we cannot strike, because all this, the other side also knows that you are coming from a position of strength. You have backups, you have domestic manufacturing, you are looking internally, you have regional alliances which you have formed, you have trade relationships. For instance, now the FTA, which is hopefully coming very soon with EU and the United Kingdom. The US knows about all this. It's not that they are unaware of all this. So all these are bargaining chips, but keep the biggest chip, the biggest bargaining chip which you have, that you are a nation of 1.4 billion people. I'm repeating that again. English speaking, large pool of skilled workforce. Now, when it comes to the US, we need to be very careful about a couple of things. There have been some disturbing reports which have been coming in, especially from the office of the USTR. The USTR is the US Trade Representative, where they have red flag three areas vis-a-vis India. The first is the Make in India program. The second is what I call what is known as data localization, and the third is the defense indigenization program of India. And they have said that they are listing these as unfair trade practices. And this actually, to my mind, is the raison d'etre of India, of New Bharat. This is what defines the new India of today. And has to be absolutely no compromise on these three essentials when it comes to dealing with the US, come what may, whether we get a trade deal or not. There can be no compromise. These are the red flags which should come up for us, that we are not going to talk or talk about all this, or give way on these two parameters. The Make in India is now the central fuel force which is driving India forward. There are people who are calculating now that maybe in the next 10, 15 years, we might even become self-sufficient in all the defense equipment. We might not have to import anything, because the way we are already exporting close to about 24,000 crores of defense equipment all over the world. And a time could come where we could become totally self-sufficient in manufacturing our own defense equipment. Data localization, that's a big bugbear of the tech companies. That why is data, India insists on having data localized within India and it's not taken outside, because data is, it's the new king. Whoever controls data controls the world. We can't let go of that. And the third is, of course, as I said, the defense indigenization. Just to give you some news, for instance, the Pinaka multi-barrel rocket system. Now it was bought by Armenia with fantastic results. Now I think France and Spain are placing orders for that. The BrahMos missiles, so many countries in the Asia Pacific are placing orders for that. So we can't let go. We can't roll back these programs. Whatever the USTR might say, that's a no-go area we have to absolutely keep in mind. And in today's day and environment, what is also important for India, which India is already doing, is to be nimble on its feet, is to sense these opportunities, take these opportunities, form new alliances. But then let me come to this most important part of this entire upheaval which has happened, and what India really needs to be doing. More than even the US, as I explained to you, that the focus of the US really is its own MAGA constituency. What is our focus? Our focus should not even be the US, or for that matter, any other country, Our focus should be that because of this world upheaval, we need to carry out internal reforms in India to facilitate our domestic industry. Because believe you me, that is still, we have done a lot of talk about that, but there has been no real progress on that. Even today, you want to open a MSME, that is a medium enterprise business. You want to open a factory. You want to set up an industry. You want to set up a unit. There are hundreds of licenses. There are hundreds of rules which you have to follow. All that has to go. You have to empower the entrepreneur in India to dream big, think big, to act big, to generate money, to ask for investments, and then to produce more, to come up with creative new ideas. And all that will only happen if we deregulate our economy. There was something very interesting with the Commerce Minister, Mr. Goyal, said when he was talking about startups a few days back. He said most of the startups are in the valuation business. They are in areas like deliveries and soft areas where you very quickly you end up making some money. Then people buy flashy cars, great lifestyle, but you're not really contributing to the economy as such. And this is a good point out there. So I'm also arguing in that by the same logic to the Commerce Minister, one has to say that your point is well taken, sir. But at the same time, from the government side, please facilitate the easing of regulations so that people who want to, for instance, enter into more meaningful sectors of the economy, people who want to enter into high tech, into space, into defense, into industry, into metallurgy, into so many hundreds of other fields, then they don't run up against a wall of these regulations which we have set up, which go back to the British era. They have to go. And therefore, I'm arguing in this podcast, the time has come where number one, either the prime minister or the finance minister addresses the nation on these issues, number one. And number two, please call a special session of parliament to primarily to deregulate these things. Set up that, start that process. Don't wait a day longer. This is a golden opportunity because right now the world is in turmoil. It is in complete upheaval. And right now is a time to strike hard because right now even the opposition will not be against you if you carry out these reforms. These reforms are urgently needed. That is what we need to do from the Indian end. And finally, I will end on a little bit of a take on the security situation also, because remember, economics, business goes hand in hand with security, with the security infrastructure, the security environment around us. And the biggest bugbear right now for us is not even Pakistan or certainly not China at the moment, but it is Bangladesh. And therefore, from that point of view, I am saying this is a mild criticism of the government that what is the need for our prime minister to go and meet this so-called advisor of the Bangladesh government, this Yunus fellow. He is not an elected leader. He's a nobody. And as we all know, then they spun a false narrative after that meeting, which they have been going on and on about it. They have been trying to desperately either first engage with the Pakistanis, bring them in. Then they were desperately, initially it started the Americans, who by the Americans, we all know the previous regime had placed Yunus to power in this country. Then they went to the Pakistanis to somehow make them intercede and come into the country. Then they have now gone to China that can you build an airfield somewhere near the chicken's neck. I am arguing in this podcast we should be very, very careful out here. There is no need to shake hands with such people. There is no need to be the good boy, the friendly neighbor, what we have done with Maldives. Bangladesh is not Maldives. Bangladesh is a far more, I would say, a far more dangerous entity than any of the countries around us. We need to expand and finish this chicken neck problem for once and all. And even if it means that we have to go beyond our territories and, spread out the land areas and widen this chicken neck for our comfort so that not even in the wildest imagination, the Bangladesh advisor can go to another country and say, oh, seven sisters, that is the seven states, northeastern states of India, can be cut off from India. This is what he was alluding to, really. Not even in his violent dream, which means you create this land corridor where, these seven states are completely connected with India. See, we in BIMSTEC regional grouping, we have been talking of the cooperation of these northeastern states with countries like Thailand, with countries, with Southeast Asia. But I think that is step number two. The step number one is that there has to be more connectivity with mainland India, which means that you have to expand on the chicken eggs. That has to be a security priority for the present government. And therefore, in future, we should avoid these kind of meetings with such characters like Yunus, etc. We should be mindful and, well, the world right now there's an opportunity, as I said in the beginning. There's an opportunity in upheaval. There's an opportunity. Everybody's caught up in their own problems. This is the time to strike and strike very hard at Bangladesh. Expand your chicken neck. No one's, even if people notice it, no one's going to do much about it. There will be some little bit of hue and cry. It will die down, but this is the time. Strike hard, expand the chicken's neck, remove this irritant and this problem for once and all. Expand. In fact, I would say go right up to Chittagong, till the Chittagong harbor. So that's the summing up of the economic and the security situation in the country. With pain also comes a sense of opportunity, I've spelled out that opportunity for us. We have an opportunity. There's no need to panic. There is every need to put our heads down, continue the course. The government is doing, I think, extremely well so far. I only wish that on the security situation, we are a little more. This is, after all, our region. We are the big, for want of a better term, we are the big dadas of this region. We need to behave like one also. The message has to go out to loud and clear to everyone. And only in that capacity, I would say America is showing the way. The way they have, for instance, they have made the Gulf of America from the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. These are things which are pointers at what big countries do. This is the world we live in. This is the way to go forward to a certain extent. We live in very interesting times, and let's watch the space, what really happens on this tariff regime. But for India, the way is clear. It's an opportunity. All we need to do is to grab this opportunity and make it work for us. And on this note, I come to the end of this podcast. Hope you really liked it. On this note, it's goodbye and cheers from my end.